So the research. Some context first. The New Zealanders in the Arts Survey was first done in 2005, so this is the 5th time we've conducted it. There are essentially 2 surveys, one for adults and one for young New Zealanders aged 10 to 14 years. In tandem with this, we also collect data for the Audience Atlas New Zealand, which was first published in 2011. And this is a market research survey over the last 3 years into attendance and behaviour. While this is the 5th time we have undertaken the research, there were some changes. The adult survey methodology was migrated from landline telephone interviews to entirely an online platform. And what this has done is given us the opportunity to increase the sample size substantially. So we can now provide detailed regional data for the first time and richer insights into the attitudes and motivations for engagement through including new questions. The surveys were carried out by Colmar Brunton between the 25th of October and the 29th of November last year. So to the big data. Engagement. Engagement is defined for the purposes of the research as a combination of attendance, as in going to an arts event or a location, and participation, which is active involvement in the making or presentation of art. And the good news is that 80% of New Zealanders have either attended or participated in the arts in the previous 12 months. And this is very encouraging because it is consistent with previous findings. So it's not growing, but it's not declining. But what about attitudes? We also ask New Zealanders what they think and feel about the arts. And they believe that the arts are a source of national pride, but that they should be inclusive and accessible to all. So it's good news for the Minister's passion for access. 3/4 agree they feel proud when our artists do well overseas. 2/3 agree they learn about different cultures through the arts. And almost 2/3 agree that the arts should be part of everyone's education. While the portion of New Zealanders who feel positive about the arts is greater by a large margin than those who don't, there is a significant neutral middle, feeling neither one way nor the other. One of the challenges for Creative New Zealand and the sector is to think about how we can address these more ambivalent attitudes. So turning to attendance. Attendance has been maintained and is still high, with almost 3/4 of New Zealanders having attended an arts event in the previous 12 months, the same as the previous survey in 2014. However, there is room to improve this frequency of attendance and the number of people attending overall, because almost 2/3 of New Zealanders agree that while they are interested, they don't go much. The survey suggests having people to go with, more events that appeal to their tastes, and cheaper ticket prices would also increase that attendance. There is also a significant minority who I would describe as super users. 1 in 5, 22%, had attended the arts more than 5 times during the previous 12-month period, and a further 29% had attended between 4 and 10 times. We probably all know some of those people, but they are gold, because they are potential ambassadors for what we do. As for participation, as a reminder, this is active participation, involvement in the making or presentation of art. More than half of New Zealanders are participating, a substantial increase from 43% in 2014 and 36% in 2011. So what's driving this? The increase is largely driven by more people participating in the visual arts, up to 10%. One suggested reason for this is that the digital technology is supporting a more web-based digital art and or filmmaking approach individually, and this is included in the definition of visual arts. Ngā toi Māori, there is some very good news for the future here as well. Attendance at Ngā toi Māori events has reached its highest level to date, with 1 in 5 New Zealanders attending in the previous 12 months. And this is up from 17% in 2014. Māori arts also reach a wide audience, with 31% of Pacific peoples, 19% of New Zealand Europeans, and 19% of Asian New Zealanders also attending. And participation in Māori arts has also increased. Tangata whenua themselves attend and participate in the arts more frequently than any other group. 33% are high attendees, and 31% have high rates of participation. That is 13 or more events during the year. This is compared to a national average of 20%. Ngā tangata whenua also agree that they benefit from Ngā Toi Māori in other ways because it supports national identity and helps them learn about their culture, and it encourages them to speak te reo Māori. Creative New Zealand Toi Aotearoa is very keen to explore how we maintain this wonderful momentum for Ngā Toi Māori. We are working currently on a Māori arts strategy. Pacific peoples. Attendance at Pacific Arts events has increased to its highest level to date, with 18% of New Zealanders attending in the previous 12 months. They also reach a wide audience, with 40% of Māori, 18% of Asian New Zealanders, and 14% of New Zealand Europeans attending. And participation in Pacific Arts is consistent with previous surveys. However, 3 in 10 Pacific peoples participate in Pacific Arts, and this latest statistic indicates there's a real opportunity for further inclusion in this demographic. There are also some interesting trends with young people. More than half of New Zealanders, 52%, had participated in Pacific Arts in the previous 12 months, and this has grown steadily from 2008, when participation was at 42%. This growth has been driven by steady increases in young people's involvement in Pacific singing, dancing, and music, with 4 in 10 taking part. And young people that identify as Pacific Islanders are much more likely than average to want to increase their involvement. So there's a real opportunity there. So what about our rangatahi? In the 10 to 14 year age group, all young New Zealanders had attended an arts event and had been actively involved in the previous 12 months. Tick. Young New Zealanders feel positive about the arts. 35% feel brilliant, and 31% feel really good when doing creative things. They also feel that being involved has other benefits. It gives them self-confidence, it makes them feel good about their lives, and it helps them make new friends. But before we get too complacent, the results could be seen as largely positive, but there are some less positive trends emerging. The proportion of young people that feel positive about the arts, either brilliant or really good, is declining, from 85% in 2011 to 74% in 2014, and now 67% in 2017. There also appears to be a decline in enjoyment as young people enter their teens. While 74% of 10 to 12-year-olds feel really good when they are being creative, this declines to 57% for 13 and 14-year-olds. There's also a gender difference. 77% of girls feel really good about doing creative things, and only 57% of boys do. So what are the barriers and triggers? Although most young people are satisfied with their level of involvement, a sizable minority, 21%, would like more. And when we asked them what was preventing that engagement, their barriers were lack of time, affordability, and lack of confidence. They said they would be more likely to engage if activities were cheaper or free, their friends were going, or there were more or better choices closer to home. And there were differences within the group. Young people that identify as New Zealand European are much more likely than average to say that they do not have enough time to do all the creative things they would like to do. Young people living in households with annual income of up to $80,000 per annum are much more likely than average to say they can't afford to do what they want to do. And 13 to 14-year-olds are much more likely than average to believe that they are not very good at creative things. 43% versus 29% on average. Finally, young people living in small towns and rural communities are much more likely than average to say there weren't enough things for them to do. So, the trends that I talked about before are demonstrated by this slide. There are differences on how young people view their own creative potential, and this is a growing trend. When asked on a scale of 1 to 5 where they would rate themselves for not that creative to extremely creative, there is an emerging age and gender gap. Self-reported creativity for young children, the blue line, has been trending up since 2011, but the opposite trend has been observed for the older children, orange. In addition, the gender gap has increased since 2011, with self-reported creativity trending up for girls, but remaining the same for boys. This trend, if it continues, has implication for the whole of New Zealand society and not just the arts. If we're trying to create creative, innovative people who contribute in an imaginative way as fortune's darlings, we need to address these trends. What about young adults from 15 to 24? Young adults are significantly more engaged with the arts than the national average, and this is largely driven by participation, which at 69% is significantly higher than 52% average for all New Zealanders. And their desire for greater involvement is also higher than average. This group is much more likely to say that some arts events interest them, but they still don't go very much, 61% versus 50%. The triggers that would increase their attendance, the orange bar, are much more pronounced when compared to those for all New Zealanders, with the exception of price. There are some significant differences with this group in their attitudes towards the arts, with far fewer of them believing that New Zealand arts are of high quality or are world class, that the arts should be part of the education of every New Zealander, or that their community would be the poorer without the arts. Supporting children and young adults to be engaged with the arts is obviously important for their well-being and development, but it is also critical to the future of the arts in New Zealand. And if you believe, as I do, that the arts challenge us to become better versions of ourselves, this is a finding we need to address. And that's why we were very delighted today, thank you again, Minister, that Creative New Zealand will be investing $5 million over the next 5 years to support and encourage that engagement. When we come to the regions, as I mentioned earlier, this survey has enabled us to get much more nuanced detail on regional engagement. So, there are some hotspots. People most likely to agree with the statement, my community has a broad range of arts and artistic activities that I can experience or participate, live in Wellington City, Otago region, Nelson City and Taranaki region. Wellingtonians are more likely to agree than any other New Zealanders that access to the arts is a reason for them living in the city. Areas where access to a broad range of activities is viewed as more challenging, however, are the West Coast and Southland, Waikato and Auckland. 44% of the survey agreed that my community has a broad range of arts and artistic activities that I can experience or participate in, as opposed to 61% of Wellingtonians. This level of agreement for Aucklanders, which has a wide range of venues and activities, suggests that there are barriers to people accessing what the city has to offer. And we can speculate about some of those. We don't know this, but I'm assuming that transport has something to do with it. Moving to the Audience Atlas. In tandem with this survey, we are also publishing the companion report, Audience Atlas 2017, and sessions this afternoon will explore these findings in much more depth. In this survey, we ask questions about individuals' support for the arts, including volunteering, donating, and subscribing. And once again, there are some challenging findings. The support for the arts is changing. Active members and subscribers are seeing their membership as a form of giving rather than as a transaction for value. And the numbers are steadily decreasing. Since 2011, there's been a 19% decrease in real terms. We know that volunteering is an important support for the sector and significantly increases the paid workforce. It is therefore potentially very concerning to see a downward trend in volunteering. Since 2011, there has been a 39% decrease. We are also aware from other research, including some excellent research done by the Department of Internal Affairs, and I haven't got the link here, but I'll make sure it's available to you, that this is a trend observable across the whole volunteering sector, but it's particularly relevant for the arts. The picture, however, is not all about decline. Support is increasingly being offered through one-off financial donations. More than 1 million people have donated to the arts in the last 3 years. In 2017, 28% of the people in the market did so. And this represents an increase of 32% since 2014. This is extraordinary, and possibly because of the proliferation of online boosted type activities. Audience Atlas also showed us that when it comes to the specific reasons why people give and what they would most like to support, it was providing children and young people with access to the arts and cultural experiences that topped the list, with 73% agreeing that this was something they would do. Before I hand over to Stephen, I would want to leave you with 3 questions to consider throughout the day. How can we as a sector tap into that neutral middle ground? New Zealanders say they want to engage more, so how can we provide new opportunities for them to do so? Second, how can we keep our young people engaged in the arts and feeling positive about their creative potential, especially between the ages of 10 to 14 years? And lastly, how can we respond to the challenge of providing access to quality arts experiences to all New Zealanders, regardless of their gender, age or location? Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.